Well, Australia's Islamic spiritual leader Sheikh Hilali has touched off another furor following his latest comments describing Australia as a nation of convicts and liars.
In an interview broadcast on Egyptian TV, he said Australia had no freedom and also claimed Muslims had more right to be Australian than the ancestors of convicts.
Australia is no longer Anglo-Saxon. We've been in Australia longer than them. Islam is deep-rooted in the Australian soil. Islam was here before the English fleet. The English and Anglo-Saxons arrived in Australia as convicts in handcuffs. We paid from our own pockets and went there as free people.
Well, we know a lot of you are angry about that. One of his supporters is Muslim community leader Kayser Trad, who joins us now. Kayser, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Have you spoken to Sheikh Hilali since those comments?
I tried to speak to him yesterday and I couldn't speak to him. I spoke to his daughter, and I do understand that a lot of people would be upset about some of these comments. I'm not here to defend the comments. I would like to issue an apology to anybody who's offended by those comments, but I know that every fair-minded Australian would like to hear from him directly, and I do really appeal to people to wait for him to return and give him the chance to explain himself. This was part of a half-hour interview, and I don't believe he was trying to be malicious, but there were slip-ups in that interview. There were about 3 or 4 slip-ups which were noticeable, and I think once he returns to Australia, he will be in the best position to clarify what he meant by these slip-ups, and we'll just have to wait and see. But I do understand that people are offended, and I personally, as an Australian Muslim, issue an apology to every person who is offended.
Well, look, he complained last time when he referred to women as pieces of meat that he was taken out of context. Is he going to try and get out of this one?
Look, I don't think it's an issue of trying to get out of it, or it's an issue of explaining. And last time, it wasn't so much a reference to women, it was using an example, quoting a third party. And he was asked about those comments in Egypt, and when he said to them, this is who I was quoting, there were 2 people interviewing him, and they understood what he meant, and because they know the works of that writer that he was quoting. So he wasn't even defending those comments, he was saying, this is what I said, so you be the judge.
Kayser, what's the good of having a spokesperson talking on behalf of the Muslim who continually needs to be clarified and continually needs you coming out to explain what he said? What's the good of that?
Well, he didn't ask me to explain. I do so out of my own volition.
But it has to happen every time he opens his mouth.
It has to happen because there's a lot of people out there who would like to know. And it's our fixation as Australians with what the Mufti does and says. It's not so much that he goes out there and says, come and look at me, I'm making a comment. It's us that we want to see what Muslims are thinking, because as a broader society we are still to accept that Muslims are ordinary Australians like everybody else. And I think the sooner that people look at him as an Australian, he is an Australian. He's an Australian who's engaging to some extent in self-criticism. If he criticises Australia, he's criticising himself. And this was evident in the interview.
So he thinks he believes himself to be a liar, and he believes himself to be unjust?
Well, as I say, I believe this was a slip-up, and if he was to reflect on those comments again, I'm sure he'd be more apologetic than I am, and I issue an unequivocal apology to people who are offended, because I understand these comments are offensive. I've heard him numerous times refer to ordinary Australians as the most wonderful people on earth, and I have to also give credit to the Prime Minister. His response to this was, I thought, outstanding in the circumstances. I'm somebody who's usually critical of what the Prime Minister says, but I think this time he's shown great leadership. One issue that people really should bear in mind, that regardless of what some of our ancestors were in this country, the contributions of generations of Australians have made Australia the most desirable country on earth.
Well, you agree that these are crazy comments. The majority of the Muslim community would agree these are crazy comments. Why is he still in the position he's in?
Well, look, his position is for us to go to him and ask him to explain some religious issues, not to go and nitpick every comment that he makes. He's entitled to his own personal...
Kayser, we're not nitpicking. He's gone on Egyptian television and he has said some extraordinarily offending things about the country and the people that he lives with here. That is the issue. He cannot be the spokesperson for the Muslim community anymore, can he?
Well, he never was. As I say, we as a society have projected him as the spokesperson.
Well, he shouldn't be the leader then, or the cleric.
Even that is an issue that if we were to understand how the community works, we need a person that we go to for religious advice.
Well, every time he opens his mouth, something comes out of it that somehow needs to be explained. That's the problem.
It happens. It happens that there's been a few gaps. It shouldn't happen.
You
I
couldn't
agree.
possibly want him in this position, would you?
It's not up to me, you see. It's up to a community of 300,000 people to decide who has the qualification.
And this 8-man panel that's going to make the decision. Are you going to step forward and say to this 8-man panel, all right, it's time we got someone else in? Because I think the Muslim community wants it as well, don't they?
Look, I'm sure the 8-person panel will be able to make their own decision and they will evaluate the various views and opinions out there, and they will decide themselves. And I certainly don't want to influence their decision in any way. They should be allowed to make that decision based on conscience and weighing in all the different issues. If they ask me, if they contact me, I'll give my opinion, as I do with the media. And my opinion is I do understand that people are offended, and I personally, as an Australian Muslim, apologise to any person who is offended by these comments.
Has the Mufti thought of going and living somewhere else?
Well, he is living somewhere else at the moment, and
is he going to be there full time?
I'd like for him to come back and explain these comments, because people want to know what he meant.
Kazar, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
Cheers.